I'm moving in with my folks, so you stranger, you better move to a cheap facility.
Wow, that's harsh, isn't it? Ha ha ha.
I believed I would find happiness with my husband, but he was just using me. Betrayed by my in-laws, I was utterly devastated. I realized these people hadn't yet seen their own naivety. Who would pay the bills if they kicked me out? I understood there was no point in being a family with such people. My next steps were clear. I immediately contacted everyone and started making arrangements.
What about the appliances?
I had a service come pick them up.
What?
The next day, I had a company collect all the furniture and appliances. My husband, Ken, was rattled and started panicking. My name is Michelle Johnson, 35 years old. Since graduating college, I've been working from home. Because of that, I only have to commute once a month. I'm a full-time employee. This is thanks to my company, who has been very accommodating. The reason is mainly because I have a disability in both of my legs. That's why I use a wheelchair to get around, even inside the house. I'm wheelchair-bound because of a motorcycle accident in college. I was hit from behind on the freeway and thrown into the air. At that time, everything seemed to be in slow motion. This is it, I thought calmly while flying through the air. Luckily, I survived. But I lost the use of my legs. Rehabilitation continues, but a full recovery is unlikely. I've been living in a wheelchair for years. I'll probably stay single forever. After coming to terms with my leg condition and finding some peace, I, who had always desired marriage, suddenly felt those feelings resurfacing. One day, my friends held a mixer for me, knowing what I was going through. It was there that I met my husband, Ken. He is 5 years older than me. He looked younger than his age. What surprised me was his behavior and speech. It was hard to believe he was 40 years old. To put it positively, he's a very straightforward person. Amazingly, when Ken saw me in my wheelchair, he asked all sorts of questions without any hesitation.
How do you manage meals? Housework? Can you reach the laundry? What about your job? Can you go to the bathroom by yourself? How about taking a bath?
Everyone else was considerate, but from Ken, I didn't feel any hint of that. I had never met someone like him before, and it made me kind of happy. Most people avoid asking about my legs, but Ken was almost brazen in his inquiries. Some might think it rude, but I was pleased. He showed interest in me. After several dates, we started dating. I could be happy with this man. At that time, I couldn't see anyone but Ken and thought I'd never meet someone who would stay with me forever. So, when he proposed 6 months into our relationship, I was overjoyed. However, things changed quickly after we got married. Ken and I started living together. We decided to live in my single-family home. Though it's a single-family home, it's a rental. It's a bit expensive, but the house is overall comfortable for a wheelchair-friendly lifestyle. I think the previous resident must have modified it for accessibility. Ken loved the spaciousness. Since I was mostly home, I did most of the housework. Sometimes when I was too tired, I'd ask him for help, but he'd say, "I'm too tired today." Saying that, he wouldn't help at all. He wouldn't assist with bathing either.
What? No way, I'm not doing that.
I can manage it alone, but it takes a lot of time. When I was living alone, I had a helper come twice a week for bath assistance. The other 5 days, I managed on my own, so I'm used to it, but I wished Ken would help to make it quicker. Every time, I took a long time to bathe. I no longer hired the helper. Ken said it was a waste of money. While bathing, I thought, my arms are getting tired. The bathroom was already adapted for accessibility. That was a key factor when choosing the property. However, Ken, who takes a bath first, doesn't tidy up afterward. He leaves everything in a mess and puts shampoo on the floor, which takes me extra time to reach. Hey, could you be more considerate when taking a bath?
Just let me take a bath without thinking about anything.
In the end, Ken wouldn't listen to anything I said.
This house is adapted for you, right? I moved here for you. So what's the problem?
But Ken, you wanted to move here too?
What? When did I ever want that?
The house was initially where I had been living. That's why the entire place is adapted for wheelchair accessibility. When Ken first visited, he was amazed by its size and the appliances. I do spend a bit on electronics and furniture.
I'd like to live in this house after we marry.
He used to say. But now?
This handrail is so annoying. It's like an old man's house.
Why would you say that?
I should have looked for another house.
I finally realized after we started living together. Ken married me because I had a house, an income, and could do housework. Indeed, at the mixer, he was overly curious about my ability to do chores. Being married to me, who has a disability but can do everything on my own, made him seem like a wonderful husband to his colleagues and friends. The truth is far from it. He just made me do everything, despite my disability. The proof of that is him going out drinking every day. He's been a part-timer since we started dating. Realizing all this after marriage is embarrassing and brings me to tears. Yet, I didn't leave him. Surely, someone who married me can't be completely devoid of love for me. I kept telling myself that.
Hey, give me some spending money.
Didn't I just give you some?
I've already spent that.
Ken became increasingly dependent on me financially, not working at all. I consulted his mother. Ken doesn't seem willing to work. What should I do?
He's probably tired from working so long. Why don't you let him rest for a bit?
My mother-in-law always said she'd be there to listen to anything, but whenever I sought her advice, she invariably sided with her son. Being her only child, perhaps it's natural to her, but I couldn't accept it. I have had no family to turn to since I've lost my parents. I felt utterly lost. I considered talking to a friend, but the one time I vented a bit, I was told I was being too fussy. Ken is just that good at keeping up appearances. That night, I ended up being blamed by Ken.
Hey, you said unnecessary things to my mom.
About work?
Yeah. Why would you worry an old lady like that? I can't believe you. Seriously?
Then why don't you work so as to not worry her? When I said that, Ken stormed out. He always leaves when things don't go his way. And then he comes back drunk in the morning.
I grace you with my presence.
It's early morning. Don't bother the neighbors. Be quiet.
Shut up. Don't tell me what to do.
He's impossible to deal with when he's drunk. All I can do is stay silent and endure. Maybe I'm almost at my limit. I was beginning to think that way. But the thought of being alone again was sad. I was torn between enduring this and ending my life as a single woman. That's when the idea of divorce became more prominent in my mind. Then, Ken suddenly brought this up.
I'm thinking of living with my parents.
Eh? You mean you're moving to your parents' home?
No, they'll move in here.
He spoke as if living together was the most natural thing. Moreover, he had already decided on his own that they would move into our house. I understand wanting to be near aging parents, but both of them were still healthy, and it baffled me why they would move here instead of staying at their home. Do we really need to live here together? It'll be cramped with 4 people, and it's inconvenient for me since I work from home.
You only think about yourself. I never thought you were such a cold-hearted person.
I'm just saying there's no need for them to move here when they have their own home.
This place is bigger, and it's equipped with modern conveniences and is wheelchair accessible, right?
If my in-laws were to move in, I'll have to be constantly mindful of them during work. Ken is hardly ever home, which is fine, but his parents are on their pension and likely to be around a lot. Plus, with my use of the wheelchair, everything I do takes a little longer. I could easily imagine how stressful it would be to live like that. Give me some time to think about it.
We can't wait that long. Hurry up.
He said he couldn't wait, but Ken really didn't wait for me at all. Unbelievably, he brought his parents over on the weekend. I realized that this plan to move in together must have been discussed in their family for some time.
Hey, I've been thinking, why don't you go into a facility?
What? I couldn't believe my ears. What on earth was this man saying? A facility? Me?
Yeah, it's a good idea, right? I mean, you have your limits doing things alone, right? In a facility, they take care of everything.
It seemed he was not just planning to live with his parents, but to get rid of me.
I'll visit you sometimes.
That was my wake-up call. If not now, when would I stand up for myself? Hey, what exactly do you think I am to you?
What? You're my wife, aren't you?
You suggest putting your beloved wife into a facility?
Wait. When did I ever say I loved you, Michelle?
I felt my face flush with anger. This man had been using me. I knew it, didn't I? Wasn't it my fault for letting it go this far? Just as I realized I needed to take a stand, Ken said something even more unbelievable.
I'm moving in with my parents here, so you stranger, you can go into some cheap facility.
What did you say? I looked to his parents for some kind of support, but they both wore unsettling, smug smiles. What are you smiling at?
Isn't that harsh? His mother said mockingly.
Perhaps they had been eyeing my house even before we married. Everything had been moving too fast lately. I knew I had to kick them out. Please leave.
What did you say?
Leave now.
You. How dare you speak to my parents like that?
That moment, I truly saw Ken's true nature. He was furiously yelling at me. If Ken values his parents so much, he should earn his own money and build them a house. Why should I lose my home? I felt a boiling rage inside me.
Ken, it's okay. Michelle was just surprised because we came all of a sudden.
We just came to look around today.
Yay, it's necessary to check before moving in. There are more appliances than the last time we visited, and it seems comfortable to live in.
They were seriously planning to take over my house. I took a deep breath to calm down. When I let oxygen into my brain, a question struck me. If I were to leave, how will they manage to live? Ken's parents are pensioners, and Ken is a part-timer. I currently cover all the rent and living expenses of this house. Who's going to pay the $2,800 monthly living expenses? Do they think Ken is earning that? Ignoring my doubts, Ken's parents left in a good mood. Ken left with them.
I'm staying at my parents' tonight.
Wait, I want to discuss this properly.
There's nothing to discuss. I, the head of the household, have decided. My opinion won't change.
Left alone, I was in a state of shock. But I couldn't just stand still. I had to do something. First, I called a real estate agent I knew. Ken didn't come home that day. He was probably celebrating with his parents. I quickly sorted my belongings into essential and non-essential items. The next day, when Ken returned home and saw how I had organized my belongings, he laughed.
Ha! You've started organizing your things. Did you find a facility to move into already?
Yes, I did. Ken seemed surprised by my immediate response. I took the opportunity to hand him a signed divorce paper. Here, I've signed my part. Now you just need to sign it.
A divorce paper? Why are we getting divorced?
Because you're kicking me out, right? Then there's no point in staying married. Ken looked as shocked as a pigeon hit by a bean shooter. It seemed he hadn't expected me to initiate a divorce.
No, you can manage without me, right?
I don't understand what you mean.
Who else would marry you besides me?
I can live on my own.
But you said you wanted to get married.
Ken's panic revealed how arrogant and self-assured he was. He approached me thinking I was a lonely, disabled single woman. Independent, with money, not struggling with life. Plus, I'm always home to do the chores. A perfect woman for him to stay free. He didn't have to work, and money was still coming in. He received praise from others for marrying me, and I didn't have anyone else to marry, so I wouldn't leave him. He had been thinking that way and acting confident. That's why he was so shocked by the divorce papers.
Why? You might end up single for life if you divorce me.
Better to be single for life than continue a married life with you.
You're going to spend a lonely life by yourself. Are you sure?
Whether I'm lonely or not is not for you to decide. Ken was flustered by my retaliation. I could see he was shaken. I hadn't realized how weak he was. I didn't understand why I had been so submissive to such a man. Deciding to divorce felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I think I was too controlled by my desire to be married.
Anyway, there's no need to leave the house so soon. Even though I suggested going to a facility, I didn't mean for it to be this soon.
Oh, it's fine. I'll do as you wish. Don't worry. Now, please sign the divorce papers.
Why? Why do you want to move so quickly? Think about it.
I've already signed my part of the divorce papers, so please sign yours.
Huh? Wait a minute. Isn't this too soon?
This man's attitude changed constantly, and I observed him with amazement. He switched between mockery, panic, and business, When I calmed down, I started to find it annoying. I've already contacted the facility staff, and they know my situation, so it's okay.
When did you do all of this? You've been preparing all this time, haven't you?
Yes, even before I met you. In reality, I had already chosen a facility for my retirement. It was like a condominium. I had read various books, including books on investments, when I was injured and felt anxious about the future. During that time, I had decided to invest in stocks and real estate. I had diversified my income by investing my salary and my parents' inheritance separately. I had already purchased the facility I had in mind, and I had been using it to generate rental income. I hadn't told any of this to Ken. It was my hidden asset.
You don't need to get a divorce. Understand? You can stay in this house. Let's live together with my parents.
You really don't understand anything. There's no way we'll live together. He has a simple-minded way of thinking. Even though I had brought up the idea of divorce, it seemed like he still believed there was no one else but him. Sorry, but I've already made up my mind.
What's wrong with you? You've been saying all sorts of selfish things. Do whatever you want. Don't come crying to me later.
I won't cry, so don't worry. Just sign the papers. It had been several hours, I think, during which I had been organizing my belongings. Then I heard Ken making a phone call somewhere. Judging by his tone, it was probably his parents. It was pitiful that he couldn't make such decisions on his own and had to rely on his parents. While thinking about that, Ken suddenly came to me.
I understand. I'll go through with the divorce. But once I sign it, you better leave quickly.
Ken reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Perhaps he regretted losing me as a housekeeper, but he must have thought that he wouldn't have to do any housework when living with his parents. There was already a house, and it was fully furnished. There were no immediate issues with daily life. Having reconciled with the situation, he tossed the divorce papers to me and headed back to his parents' house.
Well, I'm going to discuss the future with my parents now, so get ready to move out quickly.
All right, I'll do that. My move was completed within a week. During that time, Ken never showed up. We met again about a day after the move was completed. It was when I was trying to start a new life in my new home. I received a call from Ken, summoning me to our old house.
Hey, what's going on? It's empty here. What happened to the appliances and everything?
I had a moving service pick up all of those things.
What?
I had called a moving service to have all the furniture and appliances collected the next day. My husband was getting agitated and flustered. His parents were there too. The appliances that were moved were mostly purchased by me. They're the ones I've been using since before we got married. The ones you have are just the ones you can see in the house. There were only 3 cardboard boxes there. I had left a few transparent garment cases that I had purchased after getting married.
Michelle, we can't possibly live like this. Divorce means we have to split our assets.
That's right. How are we supposed to live like this?
What are you saying? None of you can live here.
What do you mean?
Well, the rent is $2,000. Ken and my in-laws froze in shock. Even though my parents-in-law were not aware of it, I had informed Ken about this when we got married.
Don't you own the house?
No, I don't. I had asked a friend who was a real estate agent to help lower the rent a bit. I had also mentioned to Ken that if I were to leave, the rent would go up. The property had features for accessibility, and a few people with similar issues had already inquired about moving there, so I recommended them to leave the place.
Why didn't you say that earlier?
That's right. What's going to happen to us?
I don't know about any of that. I've already told Ken.
I haven't heard anything about this. I'll sue you.
I knew he would react this way. Honestly, from an outsider's perspective, it might look like I was divorcing him selfishly, canceling the lease on the house, and making off with the furniture and appliances. However, I was confident. You can sue, but do you even have the money to hire a lawyer? Ken's face twisted in anger. This man didn't even have the money to hire a lawyer. Even if he somehow managed to hire one, I had an ace up my sleeve. I handed a few photos to Ken and his parents.
Where did you get these?
The photos showed Ken gambling and fooling around with other women. This is all done with my money. I will take this with me and fight.
Ken, what on earth is this?
Wasn't everything supposed to go well?
It seemed that my parents-in-law were extremely anxious. What could this be about? Then, suddenly, Ken started to kneel down.
I'm truly sorry. Let's cancel the divorce and please come back. I need you, Michelle.
You're the one who kicked me out, right? Also, the divorce has already gone through, so what on earth are you saying? Besides, you don't love me, don't you? Since that's the case, I'll just leave. Then, even my parents-in-law kneeled down next to Ken.
We don't have a place to live anymore.
This was completely unexpected. What do you mean?
Our house is being seized?
Surprisingly, it seemed that Ken's parents would have to vacate their house in a few weeks. It turned out they had declared bankruptcy. The debt that Ken's father had accumulated had grown into an insurmountable sum for retirees. Ken, who used to receive pocket money from his parents when he was single, thought that he could get married and be supported by them. I could understand why his mother was kind before our marriage. Now you're apologizing, but it's too late. I can't do anything about it, and I don't want to.
Are you okay with us becoming homeless on the streets?
It's your own doing, isn't it?
Can we at least have the appliances and furniture? You have a lot of money, right?
Are you planning to sell them?
No, Ava?
It was clear what he was after. I made it clear that I had no intention of giving away a single piece of furniture or appliance.
Don't say such things.
Please, have mercy.
It's too late for apologies now. Figure it out on your own.
That's why we're asking, because we can't do it ourselves.
I told Ken and my parents-in-law, who were being overly persistent, that if they couldn't pay the rent, they should leave. Originally, I rented the place in my name, so if I cancel the contract, it's over. It was easy to kick them out. In the end, even if the ownership was to be transferred, Ken, who had no job, probably wouldn't be able to live in this house anymore. I had checked everything with the real estate agent.
Yes, I can afford the rent.
In the end, it was decided to cancel the rent for the place. I no longer had any use for this house, and since the divorce has already been finalized, everything is over. I managed to get the three of them out of the house and lock the door.
What are you going to do now?
I can move into a facility, so that's what I'll do.
Humph. The facility is probably the worst kind of place with no freedom or anything. Do your best in such a poo environment.
Perhaps because he couldn't stand it without saying anything to me, he spat out those words at the end. I ignored him and left the scene, leaving Ken and his parents behind. However, Ken, as expected, did not stay quiet and visited the facility I had moved into a few days later.
Hey, what's going on? This is...
Ken looked at the facility I was in and seemed about to faint. Far from being a terrible environment, it's the best. I had moved into a high-end facility worth $1 million. I bought it with the money I had saved and the money I had earned from investments. Fortunately, the person who rented the place had come out at the right time, so I was able to move in right away. I also sold some appliances, had some temporary income, and still have some leeway. This facility, as expensive as it is, has doctors and caregivers on duty. The layout is like a condominium, with private areas as well. The room is a 3LDK, and some families live here together as well. You can call a caregiver with the push of a button, and bathing is assisted every day. Originally, I had intended to make it my final resting place, but I'm glad I decided to live here.
You had this much money?
Well, so what? But it's really inconvenient for me to see you come all the way here. We're complete strangers now, so please go back. Then, Ken suddenly started acting like he wanted to rely on me. Honestly, it's creepy.
Could you let even just myself live here? Please.
What are you talking about? That's not possible. We're divorced. Face the reality.
So, how about getting remarried? I'm living in an internet cafe right now. You know, it's beautiful, isn't it? I can even get a job because I don't have an address by living in an internet cafe.
He's quite shameless. It seems like he's already given up on his parents. In the end, he's only concerned about himself and no one else. Hey, have you ever looked in the mirror? Right now, your face looks incredibly pathetic, you know?
Huh?
You're getting money from your parents at your age. You became a parasite after getting married, and now you're homeless and begging for money. It's pathetic. Ken's face turned bright red. Do you really think it's okay to bow your head to your ex-wife like this? Look, everyone is watching. The residents who were peeking from the balcony were indeed watching. Actually, I had asked them in advance to watch if my ex-husband were to come to visit. Please watch if my ex-husband comes to visit, I told them. I thought that Ken would definitely come to visit me at least once. I thought he would come to see the miserable me after entering the facility or come begging for money. In any case, I expected him to show up. The residents were very cooperative and stared at Ken with pitiful eyes. It was a convincing performance. I wanted to applaud them. Finally, Ken looked around at the gazes of those around him and seemed to realize how embarrassing his actions were.
I won't ask for help anymore.
With a pale face, he said that and disappeared. He probably won't come here anymore. After that, when I went outside, I met my ex-mother-in-law, who was working at the supermarket's checkout. My ex-father-in-law works as a janitor, and my ex-mother-in-law works at the cash register. As soon as my ex-mother-in-law saw me, she turned her face away and hid. She was scolded by a young female employee for her attitude. I heard that Ken got a job through someone he met at the net cafe, but he's being overworked at a job with a ridiculously low hourly wage. I frequently host home parties and enjoy my daily life with the people from the facility. I also became friends with the wheelchair users. If there's a community like this, I think I should have moved here sooner. It's so comfortable and uplifting that I can't help but feel so much happiness. I now have time to attend the rehabilitation that I had neglected. I have a goal of being able to move my legs even a little. Both my work and personal life are fulfilling every day,